Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. MyPillow.com, promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in on this New Year's Eve edition of the show. Are you ready for 2026? Are you ready for a new year? Well, we got a lot to cover before 2025 is over. Here's what we're going to talk about today. A federal judge has ruled that the Trump administration may resume sharing limited Medicaid patient data with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, allowing the practice to move forward beginning on January the 6th. This will allow them to identify illegals who are receiving Medicaid benefits. Democrat Senator John Fetterman has a warning for his party. Learn from the politically charged whirlwind that put Donald Trump back in the White House, he says, and secured Republicans' control of both chambers of Congress, or risk staying in the minority, he says. We have highlights from his CNN interview. A U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development report found that more than $5 billion in taxpayer funds went to what they're calling questionable rental assistance recipients during the final year of Joe Biden's administration, including around 30,000 deceased tenants and thousands of potential non-citizens, according to the New York Post. And finally, independent journalist Nick Shirley, who has really just exploded on the scene this past week, and his researcher, David, who was in the video with him, returned to the Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis yesterday, dressed in a sweatshirt emblazoned with 1-800-FRAUD, following the release of his viral video alleging fraud at state-funded child care facilities in Minnesota. We got a lot to cover, so let's just jump right in.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills, but I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
So the big question, how do we prevent the widespread fraud that we are seeing, that is being revealed before our very eyes? How do we prevent this from happening in the future? How do we make people accountable? How do we hold people accountable? How do we get some of this money back? How do we make sure that people who stole our money are prosecuted? The federal government has to be allowed to police these programs. We can't be afraid of hurting people's feelings, and that's quite often the case. So the first step may have started just yesterday when a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration may resume sharing limited Medicaid patient data with ICE, which would allow ICE to identify illegals who are receiving Medicaid payments. USA Today reported that U.S. District Judge Vince Shabera of the Northern District of California said that the federal government can legally provide ICE with basic biographical, location, and contact information obtained through Medicaid records. Now, of course, they shouldn't be receiving Medicaid to begin with. But if they are, and ICE identifies them as being illegal, then the federal government should not be allowed, one part of the federal government should not be allowed to shield them and protect them from another part of the federal government, i.e. ICE. This ruling marks a partial victory for the Trump administration and in their effort to expand information sharing between federal agencies and immigration enforcement. Now, this decision follows a lawsuit that was filed back in the summer in July by 20 states, including California, seeking to block the Department of Health and Human Services from sharing Medicaid-related data with ICE and other immigration authorities. California Attorney General Rob Bonta, whose office joined the lawsuit, said the states were disappointed by the ruling that allows this data to be shared. Now, let's pause right there and think about this for a minute. We have an attorney general of a state who has sued the federal government, who objects to sharing information that could lead to the prosecution, possibly deportation of illegals. And he's opposing this. Judge Shabara emphasized that the decision does not permit the release of all Medicaid information. He said that the existing injunction still blocks the sharing of other categories of data, including information related to immigrants who are legally present in the United States. And I'm okay with that. If they're here legally, I'm okay with that, protecting some of their privacy. The judge wrote in his ruling, quote, "Beyond the basic information discussed above, the policies are totally unclear and do not appear to be the product of a coherent decision-making process." The Department of Homeland Security welcomed the decision. Assistant DHS Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said the ruling represents a victory for the rule of law and for taxpayers. Under federal law, illegal aliens are generally not eligible for comprehensive Medicaid coverage, nor should they be. But unfortunately, you have some of the states like California, who has fought this tooth and nail, who for some reason like to spend their taxpayer dollars on Medicaid for illegals. I'll never understand it. I've tried to think like they do, and I have a hard time doing that, but I'll never understand. And I get we have to be kind, we have to be caring, we have to take care of people, fellow human beings. But I've never understood why a state like California, who's almost bankrupt anyway, would want to spend their money helping an illegal rather than sending them back home. Some illegal immigrants, we understand, may receive coverage for emergency life-saving medical treatment through emergency Medicaid. In addition, several states, again including California, offer state-funded health benefits to residents regardless of immigration status. In fact, I'm told they don't even check it. You can walk in, apply for it, and they don't care if you're legal or illegal. They don't check your immigration status. And that's why we are seeing fraud like we're seeing today, because we have agencies like this who just, they don't care. They want to get the money out as fast as they can. That was Joe Biden's motto. That was the Biden administration's way of operation. We got these billions, trillions of dollars. Let's get it out on the street. Now, the Trump administration has sought to increase cooperation and data sharing between these federal agencies. This would support immigration enforcement and deportation efforts. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? If you've got an illegal who's receiving a government check, that government agency sending that check, first off, shouldn't be doing it, but they are, should be allowed to tell ICE, okay, this person is illegal. Here's where we send that check. You can go pick them up there if you want to. Now, several of those initiatives have faced legal challenges and court intervention, again, from states like California, states like Oregon, states like Washington. Back in September, a federal judge in California temporarily blocked the U.S. Department of Agriculture from collecting data on recipients of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program known as SNAP. Again, that's a program that has been abused. That's a program that if you're an illegal and you've signed up for SNAP benefits and the government knows that you're illegal and knows where you're receiving those benefits, again, shouldn't they be compelled to turn that data over to ICE, right? Some of these judges said no. It's been a long process. In November, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. barred the Internal Revenue Service from sharing tax information with ICE. Judge Shabara has not issued a final ruling in the Medicaid case. A hearing is scheduled for January the 2nd to address remaining issues related, and we're expected possibly in a few weeks to get a final ruling. But again, it blows my mind to think about federal agencies like the IRS, like DHS, any federal agency actually, who has information, knows the location of an illegal alien and won't give it to ICE. ICE is looking for them. ICE would like to locate them so they can pick them up and deport them, but the IRS won't tell them where, or DHS won't tell them where. That does not make sense to me. Help me out here. Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Any explanation for this? Why a federal agency should not be compelled to offer that information to ICE? And let's hope that this judge makes the right final decision in a few weeks. Everyone says they'll start after the holidays, and that's exactly why most people never tackle those extra pounds at all. Joey Hudson here. Right now, PhD Weight Loss is making it easy to start before the new year with a bonus designed to get you moving now. They're adding 2 free weeks to your program. That means you can ramp up during the holidays and start the new year already working toward your goals. Those 2 free weeks mean you won't roll into January feeling behind. You'll hit January already losing, already feeling better, already in control. PhD's metabolic reset system teaches your body to burn fat first. No drugs, no starvation diets, no endless workouts, just a smarter science-based system that fits real life. And when you mention 2 weeks on the phone, they'll waive your consultation fee and pay for the cost of your food during the entire program. There's no reason to wait, no reason to repeat last year. Call PhD Weight Loss today and start 2026 already ahead. 864-644-1900. Call today. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Don't wait. Do it today. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman kind of took his party to task in a recent CNN interview. He was described as ripping into his fellow Democrats for labeling President Donald Trump as an autocrat, and he urged the party to face facts about its recent electoral defeats. Now, again, this was in a wide-ranging sit-down with CNN. It aired this past Sunday on Inside Politics. And this somewhat common sense type Pennsylvania Democrat argued that the overheated rhetoric that has helped Democrats lose elections instead of winning them, he said, clearly we've lost the argument. He said, be honest about why we've lost 2 of the last 3 cycles. Here's the exchange.
Never going to change my party, but clearly we've lost the argument, and right now I think it's entirely appropriate to really be honest and just figure out why exactly have we effectively lost 2 out of the last 3 cycles, and a lot of the things we've really kind of really lost our connection with American voters in ways. And I think we can't just be, well, Trump is always wrong, or that we're going to set the country on fire or whatever. That's just not true either, of course. But, you know, when I represent a state like Pennsylvania, that keeps you honest. And you always can't forget that a lot of Americans happen to disagree with you. That does not mean that they are fascists or now they want to shred the Constitution.
But when you hear some Democrats saying Trump is acting like an autocrat.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. If you actually compare him to an actual autocrat, that is not just that. Now, last night, for example, people were complaining. They were protesting about, that's the Hitler thing. You just don't ever compare anyone to Hitler and those kinds of extreme things. And now look what happened to Charlie Kirk. I mean, the man was shot. Now we have to turn the temperature down. It's like we can't compare people to these kinds of figures in history. And this is not an autocrat. This is a product of a democratic election.
So you don't think that Trump is at all shattering any of the norms of democracy in any way?
I'm saying he's definitely different, but that's what America voted.
Yes, that's what America voted for. And John Fetterman seems to recognize that. Now, you got to understand that Fetterman represents a swing state. It flipped red in 2024. Mr. Fetterman said Democrats have drifted away from the voters that they need most, and he's right. He also pushed back hard against comparisons to history's worst figures. As you heard him say, you don't compare anyone to Hitler. Americans just don't appreciate that. They don't appreciate a Democrat calling their president or comparing their president to Hitler. Donald Trump is far from anything close to Hitler. I mean, I think anybody would admit that, other than maybe some partisan Democrat who's like Nancy Pelosi, who just can't stand anything that Donald Trump does. But you have to give John Fetterman some credit here. And I got to say, when he first ran for the U.S. Senate, I thought Pennsylvanians were just absolutely nuts to elect a guy, a grown man, who walks around in hoodies and shorts all the time, particularly in the U.S. Capitol. But John Fetterman has turned out to be probably the most common sense Democrat up there. You agree? I mean, he argued that Democrats are repeating the very mistakes that have cost them elections in the first place. And he also admitted that winning national elections comes down to battleground states and not activist applause lines. His words, not mine. The senator rejected calls from some Democrats to use government shutdowns as leverage in spending fights. He was pretty common sense when we were going through that, when the government was shut down. During the interview, he went on to talk about on the topic of public safety. And you know how some of the blue cities have fought Trump when he has offered to send in the National Guard. Fetterman said Democrats should not automatically reject federal help, even if it comes from the Trump administration. He said, quote, when 600 people are killed in Chicago once every year, roughly, I think it's entirely appropriate, meaning to get help. He recalled his time as a small-town mayor dealing with gun violence, and he said that he personally asked for assistance when needed. He said, I would be grateful for help just because Trump is calling for something, X, Y, and Z, then that doesn't mean you have to necessarily oppose it. And again, he's right. I mean, this is just common sense. You don't have to, because you're a Democrat, doesn't mean you have to always take the opposite stand from our Republican president. Fetterman also downplayed fears around National Guard deployments, recounting his own experience. He said, I would see a lot of National Guards people. It wasn't a big deal. They were just friendly, standing around. This was not the Russian army. This was our sons or daughters, our fathers or mothers kind of thing, he said. On immigration, Senator Fetterman supported secure borders, deporting criminals, but rejected mass workplace raids. He said it's not helpful to raid a factory and round them up to deport them. I would have to disagree with him on that. But still, a lot of what he said I would agree with. He talked about that he doesn't think it's appropriate to go to like a slaughterhouse in Nebraska to round people up. Despite his criticism, John Fetterman stressed he isn't abandoning his party. In the end, he said, I'm a Democrat. I just made a significant investment in the Pennsylvania Democrat Party. I'm not changing my party. Still, he made clear he won't fall in line automatically, that he's going to think for himself. But more importantly, he's going to think about what the people in his state want from him, because they elected him to represent them. And look, with Democrats facing minority status, gearing up for the 2026 midterms, Senator Fetterman advised his colleagues to reconnect with voters or keep on losing. What do you want to bet that the Democrats are going to ignore John Fetterman and they're not going to reconnect with their voters because they always think they're right? And let's hope they keep on losing in 2026. As we continue to dive into all the fraud that is being revealed, Nick Shirley's video from past weekend has just blown up. I mean, it has really blown the lid off of the idea that there is massive fraud, not only in Minnesota, but throughout the federal government, throughout federal programs. And it's got people looking in places that maybe they would not have looked before. And that's a good thing, because I'm not convinced that Minnesota is the only place that we have the fraud and deception that we have seen in these daycare centers. And I'm convinced that if we look a little closer at other states who have similar programs, we're going to find the same thing. Maybe not just with Somalians, but with other populations. Same thing with the medical transport vehicles. As we saw in Nick Shirley's video, when they drove past this huge parking lot filled with these minivans that had these decals on the side of them indicating that they were for medical transport. But yet the man said they've been sitting there forever, for months, if not years. They never move. So somebody's being paid for that vehicle as if it's transporting patients, most likely low-income patients, to their doctors and hospitals, but yet they're not being used. Just like the daycare centers, we find out, are empty and not being used. And boy, the latest thing with the literally seeing the video of the parents going into one of the daycare centers and checking their child in and then receiving a white envelope reportedly filled with cash, and then they take the child out. I mean, all they were doing is just checking the child in so that the daycare center would get paid for it. It's just amazing. And again, one more thing to add to that, we found out as well that a local Fox affiliate in the Minneapolis area had done a full expose in 2018 on this very topic, on these daycare centers. So they blew the lid off of it then, and nothing happened. They just continued to do it. Well, the latest, as the New York Post broke the story yesterday, is from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. They have found more than $5 billion in taxpayer funds that went to questionable rental assistance recipients during the final year of the Biden administration, including, you ready for this? Sit down, hold on to your coffee. 30,000 deceased tenants had been paid rental assistance. Thousands of potential non-citizens as well, according to the New York Post. So here's the story. HUD officials say that a large concentration of suspicious payments went to states like New York, California, Washington, D.C., with dead recipients getting at least some funds in all 50 states, in what federal officials are calling widespread abuse of taxpayers' dollars under the Biden administration. So here we go again. Massive fraud, just in a different department, under a different program. It's not daycare now. It's not health care. It's not medical transport. Now it's rental assistance. It's almost like the Biden administration just wanted to get as much money out as fast as they could. They didn't care if it was going to the right people for the right purposes. HUD Secretary Scott Turner said in a statement when this was revealed on Monday, he said a massive abuse of taxpayer dollars not only occurred under President Biden's watch, but was effectively incentivized by his administration's failure to implement strong financial controls, resulting in billions worth of potential improper payments. In other words, again, as I just said, get as much money out as quickly as you can. Don't worry about who you're sending it to. You don't need to double check the criteria. He went on to say HUD will continue investigating the shocking results and will take appropriate action to hold bad actors accountable. Additionally, the department is advancing efforts made under President Trump's first administration to strengthen program integrity and ensure taxpayer-funded assistance serves the vulnerable communities it was intended to serve. In other words, yes, we need to help poor people with housing. We don't need to send checks to dead people so that their do-nothing family members can benefit from it. And that's what was happening, in effect. HUD's Office of the Chief Financial Officer uncovered $5.8 billion of these, quote, questionable payments out of nearly $50 billion in total federal rental assistance to public housing authorities, to contractors, to landlords, individual landlords, and other non-federal entities in fiscal year 2024. And we know this because of this 183-page report that HUD just released. The around 11% of taxpayer dollars from HUD went to more than 200,000 possibly ineligible tenants, of which the 29,715 were deceased. They were dead. They were not here. 9,472 were non-citizens. and 165,393 were receiving sums that exceeded the threshold for assistance in their geographic region, particularly in New Orleans and other large metro areas. Now, the HUD programs are designed to help low-income residents who would not otherwise be able to afford that shelter. And the possible grift means that those truly in need could have been left out in the cold, because the dollars, we're told, are stretched thin anyway, that there's not enough assistance for people who truly need it. Now, HUD officials faulted Joe Biden and his administration for a directive to, quote, push funding out the door with minimal oversight, as well as rent assistance programs placing substantial trust and responsibility in these non-federal entities. They were charged with accurately assessing tenant eligibility, and they didn't care. They just wanted to get the money out the door. Now, HUD will have to reach out to the public housing authorities, we're told, and some of the other entities involved to confirm the extent of the fraud. They'll either pause or revoke funding. Officials will also make criminal referrals when warranted. That's what I'm interested in seeing. Because for us to stop this, for us to deter this from happening in the future, people who are considering these types of programs, defrauding these types of programs, they need to understand if they do it and they get caught, there's going to be some major accountability involved. They're going to go to prison. Their lifestyle is going to be upset severely. According to one HUD official, he said HUD is implementing processes and procedures to revoke or pause funding as part of its efforts to hold bad actors accountable. He went on to say that the department could make criminal referrals and exercise other enforcement actions once it has confirmed fraud occurred. And look, I want them to be careful with this. I want them to make sure they get it right, but I want them to hold people responsible. Don't you? Don't you think that it's time that people are held responsible? That if a landlord was receiving money, rent, for someone who was dead, don't you think that landlord should be held accountable for that? First off, he or she needs to give the money back. HUD needs to claw that money back. Secondly, he needs to be, or she needs to be, prosecuted. They need to go to jail. Here's what part of the report said. Between October 2023 and September 2024, $33 billion was spent on tenant-based rental assistance, as far more than 4 million households, and $16 billion was spent on project-based rental assistance, all of which the audit reviewed. Now, the project-based rental assistance means it's for a particular building, a particular apartment unit, for example. The more than 200,000 tenants were flagged for eligibility issues as part of the $1.5 billion in these payments from HUD, while roughly $4.3 billion, or 26.4% of the project-based payments, also had some eligibility issues. In partnership with the Department of Homeland Security, HUD identified thousands of non-citizens who were receiving some form of Section 8 or Section 9 rental assistance despite not being eligible to receive the money. And this just goes back to the Democrats, these liberal, woke Democrats who just think that we need to embrace the illegals and take care of them. They knew they weren't eligible. They allowed them to be part of the program anyway. HUD's financial report was aimed at following through on President Trump's commitment to increasing accountability and transparency, as well as protecting taxpayers' funds against waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's what we expect. That's what we ask the president to do. That's what we hope he will do. That's what he needs to do. And again, I'm not going to be happy until we see some people prosecuted, we see some people go to jail, and we get some of this money back and spend it the way it was intended to be spent. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, If you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. On the text line, texter, hey Joey, it's Jennifer. Those of us who support and appreciate President Trump usually forgive his many transgressions, quote, like we would say about an old friend. That's just Trump. However, a world leader gets fewer passes, has to make fewer mistakes, has to measure his words in order to not unnecessarily jeopardize his influence nor the interest of his party. Jennifer goes on to say, he should also let others do the bragging. No, Trump should not have put his name on the Kennedy Center over the top, and it can only bring punishment to Republicans in the midterms. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your text. Texter says, I'm listening to the show today, and something that no one has mentioned, or in the last week or so, since this story broke, why are we subsidizing daycares in the first place? Why would our government give money to a daycare even if it was a legitimate one? If they can't survive on their own, then they probably shouldn't be in business. Well, what is happening here, the daycare centers aren't necessarily being subsidized. What is happening is these daycare centers have been set up by these parties, these third parties, these criminal parties, and they are licensed for a certain number of kids, for example, maybe 60. And this federal program will allow them to be reimbursed for 60. So they have to have 60 parents sign their kids up, and they just use their little network of Somalian people. That's why when Nick Shirley goes to their door and says, hey, I'm looking for daycare for my little son, Joey, and that this is what he actually did in his videos, they won't even talk to him because they don't want to offer services to anybody outside of their Somalian network. So, and that's why we saw these videos from 2018 where you had parents come in with their kid, they sign them in, they get an envelope, reportedly with cash in it, then they leave with the child. So they're never set up for kids to stay there, and they're just set up to be reimbursed based on the number of kids they have registered. Texter says, just watch Clemson lose to Penn State this past weekend. Makes you wonder if $11+ million for the coach and money for the quarterback is a good investment. I love college football. However, the transfer portal, nil money, and coaching pay more than that of school presidents has all but destroyed the game. I miss the good old days. Speaking of college football, what about the departure or the firing of Garrett Riley, Clemson's second highest paid assistant? On Monday, Coach Dabo Swinney fired the offensive coordinator. This, of course, is triggering a university buyout. Now, here's what I've never understood about these types of deals. So, again, Riley was Clemson's second highest paid assistant. He made $1.75 million annually with 2 years left on his contract. The only other assistant coach, defensive coordinator Tom Allen, made more, who was the 13th highest paid assistant coach in the country among public universities and colleges this past season. So after averaging 29.8 points in his inaugural season of 2023, Clemson's offense averaged 34.7 points in 2024. That was 18th in the FBS. For the Tigers to win the ACC, and they made the college football playoff that year. However, they regressed this year to an average of 27.2 points, which put them 70th, despite returning experienced players, including quarterback Cade Klubnik, who everybody just had high hopes for. So as a result, Swinney moved and hasn't replaced him yet, but it's fired him. He'll be looking for somebody else. But what does this mean? Well, since Clemson terminated Riley's contract early, according to the reports, without cause, meaning he is owed the remainder of his contract, $3.5 million. So you get fired and you're paid $3.5 million. Now, his buyout can be reduced if he finds another job, which would trigger some type of mitigation clause in there. Mitigation happens, we're told, when an employee finds new employment and the person's buyout amount is reduced by the amount earned of the new job. The question is, if you're fired and you're going to get paid $3.5 million anyway, do you even look for a job? If an example, if Riley leaves Clemson to take another assistant job, he would owe Clemson 25% of his remaining salary, about $875,000, though the university has the discretion to waive that if they would like. If he takes a head coach job at a college program or any coaching position in the NFL, he has no buyout. So again, I ask you, if you're paid $300 or $3.5 million to be fired, are you going to look for a job until that contract expires? I don't know. I've never been in that position. I'd like to be paid $3.5 million to walk away. One final thing on this whole Minnesota daycare fraud thing. Independent journalist Nick Shirley, we've talked a lot about him over the past few days, and his, quote, researcher, who was only identified in the videos as David. They returned to the Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis yesterday, dressed in a sweat shirt, emblazoned with 1-800-FRAUD. This, of course, following the release of his viral video. And this was the Quality Learning Center is the one that has gotten the most attention because their sign above the door, they spelled learning wrong. They left the N out. So it reads Quality Learning Center rather than Learning Center. So they show up with these with these shirts on that have that decal on and 1-800-FRAUD. At the site, David tells reporters that he had filed a criminal complaint against Minnesota Governor Tim Walz yesterday related to the alleged widespread fraud. In a post shared on X, Nick Shirley and David, and again, I don't know his last name, and it's not included anywhere that I can find, are also shown during the visit standing outside the facility in these matching sweatshirts. Shirley caps in the post, "We out here leering and stopping fraud." Wow. You can't make this up. Both of their sweatshirts also read, as I said, the misspelled Leering Center on there. Shirley's return visit came after the facilities manager claimed his original video misrepresented the business by filming outside posted hours and falsely suggesting the center was inactive. State officials and a daycare manager have denied allegations of fraud. They dispute claims that the location was closed or improperly collecting taxpayer funds. Of course they do. The allegations, of course, stem from Shirley's viral video that was posted on YouTube back on Saturday and has just gone crazy. Hundreds of millions of views. This Quality Learning Center appeared inactive at the time that Shirley was there. He knocked on the door. Nobody would come to the door. And this video, of course, sparked the widespread attention online of officials like Representative Mike Lawler of New York, Donald Trump Jr., Elon Musk praised Shirley's reporting, while others, including Governor Walz, pushed back against it, claiming that that it misrepresented the whole situation. We'll see. But I thought it was kind of cool that he shows up in this hoodie with 1-800-FRAUD on it. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code JOEY. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.